Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Optimizing Mother podcast, where I interview mothers like you, dedicated, thoughtful, and always striving to grow. Together, we explore various perspectives and approaches in Chinuch based on Torah and Chesed. Please remember, for personal questions or unique situations, consult your Rev or Mashpia. And now it's so exciting to be able to introduce our guest for today, Estee Lieblich, who was one of our most popular episodes that we had and is back due to popular demand. She's an early childhood consultant and parenting coach who specializes in helping parents understand their children. She blends her understanding of Chassidus, her passion for education, and deep compassion for children to empower mothers to show up as their best selves and to bring out their children's strengths. She also teaches Tanya and gives parenting classes at Miriam's Motherhood Center in Crown Heights. You can reach her at soulstrengths.com. And now, welcome, Estee.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for having me again. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, specifically during this time of Sefiros HaOmer, to understand how learning more about the Sefiros could be a huge resource in our parenting journey. So the first question is, what are the Sefiros? The Sefiros are 10 divine attributes or channels through which Hashem reveals himself and interacts with the world. It's divided into our intellectual faculties, our seichel, chachma, bina, and das, and our emotions, the midas, chesed, gevurah, teferes, netzach, haid, yesod, malchus. The Sefiros are the medium through which specific qualities and attributes could be ascribed to Hashem, and they're reflected in the human soul as our spiritual makeup, and also in the human body. The chachma, bina, das is in our brain. Our right arm is chesed, left arm gevurah, teferes torso, etc. The Sefiros are not just abstract heavenly concepts. They're the blueprint of the human soul. Our psyche is built to mirror the divine structure. So when we learn about the Sefiros, that they're inside of us, it refers to the 10 kaichas hanefesh that are accessible to us at all times. There are soul strengths and our path to personal growth.
Okay, that's really cool. Is that the reason for the name of your website, Soul Strengths? That's what we're talking about.
Exactly. Soul strengths are our inherent powers that we have inside of us that are accessible to us. And the more that we are in touch with it and we know what our soul's strengths are, the more we can show up as our best self in life, in our personal growth, in our relationships, as mothers to our children, etc. So to take it a step further, we could think of the Sefiros as a comprehensive, abstract system of human function and personality, like a master code for the human experience. It's a system that provides a structural framework for how we think, how we feel, how we communicate with others, what motivates us, how we best function, etc. And from this blueprint, every person emerges with a unique personality profile. Just like Avram embodies Chesed, Yitzchak embodies Gevurah, and so on, it's the same with all of us. Kind of like nature and nurture. Our nature is how we're hardwired. It's our wiring at our core. It's what we're born with. And then our nurture is how we're affected by life, by our family, by society, by expectations, etc. So we don't get to choose our factory settings. That initial hardwiring, which we call our temperament, that's decided for us by Hashem. And it's shaped by which Sefiros are naturally more dominant within our soul. And then that combined with our genetics, our childhood, the people who influence us, that becomes our personality. So at the end of the day, no two people are exactly the same. So what we're discussing today is specifically our unique hardwiring, the specific set of Sefiros that are more dominant within different types of people, and what we're going to refer to as our unique temperament.
Or our children's unique temperament.
Exactly, our children's unique temperament. And I think that we'll also see a little bit, bits and parts of ourselves, or other people in our lives that we have relationships with. So that will be interesting as well. So the temperament through the lens of Sefiros, what does it do for us? It provides us with a framework for understanding human nature and behavior. And it's really a complete synthesized view because if you look at the Sefiros, there's so many diverse attributes. And when you look at it in the way that we're going to discuss, it's really a very integrated, holistic perspective that's organized in a very cohesive, organized way. Just to add, we have access to all the Sefiros inside of us. What we're talking about is that some are just more dominant than others. And those are the ones that make up our unique temperament profile. But really, it's a profile that's a subset of the total system because really every Sefira has within it all of the other Sefiros. And also realizing that our greatest challenges and our greatest strengths are often the flip side of the same coin. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Interestingly enough, in the Sikha of the Rebbe, or maybe this was a letter. The fundamental role of education is not only pertinent in modifying the acquired characteristics and habits that a child picks up by nurture, but also in relation to the inborn predispositions which come to the child by his nature. Here, too, the child must be educated and his natural conduct must be modified with a strong and positive involvement on the part of the parents and the teachers.
So if I could just reflect back what we're saying here today is that ourselves, our kids, we're talking in the context of parenting on the Optimizing Mother podcast. So their nature and their inborn, predispositions, like in the same family, all the different kids with all their different personalities are because of the spheres that they have most dominant within them. And that's what we want to understand today, like temperaments, how they're reflected in the spheres, understanding them, and also understanding, you mentioned, like every positive also has a negative and vice versa. Yeah, a kid's strong point is their weak point and their weak point is their strong point. And I think the older we get, the more we see that. So my question to you is, you're a parenting coach, right? And obviously you're very passionate about it if you want to talk about this on the podcast today. But how did you get into this? Like, and what's our goal? Like, we're talking to the mothers here. This isn't just like theory, like spheres class. Like, we're not just trying to go into like, Seder Stalshus for no reason. Like, we're here for Chinuch, and I'm curious, A, how did you get into it? And B, what's your hope in discussing it with all the mothers here today?
Great questions. So first I need to thank my aunt Esther Friedman from Kansas. She took the time to explain to me how temperament aligns perfectly with the spheres. She was helping me understand my children better, and she is a certified temperament coach. And then she encouraged me to study it because I was already working with parents of children. So she works with young adults and couples to help them understand each other. And she encouraged me to work with parents of children. So once I saw how relevant and how practical this was and how individualized it was for each of my children, and then she's taught me how it's connected to the spheres. And that just really blew my mind and opened up an entire new way of viewing things. The spheres are so nuanced and it never gets boring. There's always more and more and more to learn in Chassidus about the spheres. And back to your question about, are these lofty concepts? On the one hand, yes, they're lofty concepts. On the other hand, they're meant to help us and inform us and let us present ourselves and express ourselves in this world as our best selves. So we could take this lofty, abstract idea of spheres, and what I'm trying to accomplish today, our goal is to make it really practical, so that we have a better understanding of our children and of ourselves possibly in the process as well. And that when we have that understanding of children come to trust that their parents know them deeply and that their parents see their strengths and that they understand their challenges and that their parents have their best interests at heart. And then that's when they're willing to hold our hands as we help them go out of their comfort zone and really learn to become the best version of themselves. That's our goal.
So understanding them will help us help them because they're not just giving us a hard time. Their personality is a certain way, their differences, etc. And I love how you said it before about like we're understanding Hashem's spheres to really also understand how that mirrors as the kaichais or the unique personality that Hashem entrusted our beautiful children to us with. So, okay, let's get right into it. What are some of these, let's hear how the spheres and these temperaments, how they go. We're ready.
Okay, so if you picture the classic diagram of the spheres, there's the right column, the left column, and the middle column. Avram personifies Chesed and also represents the right column. Yitzchak personifies Gevurah and represents the left column. Yaakov personifies Sefiros and represents the middle column. Under the middle column is Malchus. Malchus is the extension of the middle column. And in this framework of the three kavim, of the right, the middle, and the left, Malchus personifies Yosef. So we're looking at those four spheres of Chesed, Gevurah, Sefiros, and Malchus.
Got it. So it's interesting. And I noticed you said in this framework, because in other places, maybe Yosef is other things, as you said, but here in this framework, it's Malchus, there's four.
Exactly. It also says about Yosef in other parts of Chassidus, Yosef is Malchus to Atzilus. He's the bridge between the world of Atzilus and the world of Bria. And there's more to it, but yes, exactly. In this framework, when we talk about Malchus, we're going to talk about Yosef. Malchus is also David, but in this framework, again, back to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Yosef. And there is a pattern of four types that we see in different parts of Torah. Four faces of the Merkava, Arba Minim, four children at the Seder table. Who is wise, who is happy. There's four types of people and how they view their personal possessions, Shali Shalach, Shalach Shali, etc. So here, the four that we're going to discuss are the three Kavim and the extension of the middle kav as malchus. So let's start right away with the right column. The right column is chachma, chesed, and netzach, which in temperament theory we refer to as the artisan. So starting first with chachma. Chachma is wisdom, from the words of kayachma, the power of what? It's the conception of an idea, like a flash of lightning, spontaneous insight, flash of inspiration that contains the whole idea within it. This child is creative, full of good ideas. It hits them like a flash of lightning, and they're very in the moment, very impulsive, very quick thinking, big picture thinkers, without the details and the analytical skills of Bina. In Kapitel Kuf Daled, in Tehillim, it says, Kulam Chachma Sisa, and we learn from there that doing, making, and physical action is equated with Chachma. And this particular temperament likes to be the most physical with their work. They love using their hands, their feet, all their senses to experience the world. We really see this with children, all children, but this type especially, like they keep it up even as they grow out of their toddler years. They love dirt and action and machines and buttons that they could press to make noise. They have very keen senses. They love working with tools and instruments, vehicles. They're quick thinking and quick activating, and they seek out action. There's really never a dull moment with this type. They're sensory seeking, and they could tolerate a lot of noise and a lot of action for a long time. They're also the type of child that if they're bored, they might, like poke their sibling, physically or verbally, for some action. So as we go down the kav, right, beneath chachma, we have chesed. So
it's
again,
the same kid.
We're talking about the same child. Yes. We're talking more about their personality now within chesed. Chesed is a force of expansiveness and attraction without the confines and restrictions of boundaries. Chesed implies a capacity for attaching oneself to others freely with unconditional love and giving. And we see this with Avram Avinu. He loved all of Hashem's creations equally. He was very big-hearted, caring. He loved hosting guests very generously, b'harchava. If we talk about Avram some more, again, Avram being chesed and also representing the right column, during his time, the right thing to do was paganism, idol worship. And it was a socially acceptable, normal, conventional thing to do that everybody was doing, and it simply didn't work for him. And Avram broke those boundaries of the socially acceptable norms.
So right in quotation marks, it was the right thing as in like the norm.
Exactly. When we talk about the right thing, we're not talking about what's right according to Torah. We're talking about what's socially acceptable.
Okay.
Like think about it in life in general. There are so many right things to do that are not really about right or wrong in Torah. It's just a socially acceptable thing to do or not do, like many unspoken rules of conduct that we're supposed to know and follow. This was the extreme with idol worship, but we see that that Avram Avinu, he didn't abide by the socially imposed limits, and we see how he broke the idols and how he went through the 10 nisyanos and the fire, and we really see a true expression of the right side, which is very expansive, unlimited kindness and generosity, and not bound by boundaries. So we see from here, and in general, the way that Chesed is described, it lacks boundaries. Hashem created the world with Chesed, and it needed Gevurah to contain it. But Chesed on its own, these children don't like rules that much. They don't crave the security of boundaries. They're very comfortable acting bold and daring, and they're also very comfortable with a lot of things happening around them. Like they could be okay in a mess. They want to like
machers. They're like machers.
Yes, little machers, adorable little machers. Exactly. They know how to get attention and hold the interest of a crowd, and they don't care to keep things too neat and orderly. Chesed also is compared to water, right? And water is the source of all pleasure. Without water, nothing grows. So all of our food, shelter, clothing, everything originates from water. So on the one hand, Chesed is a source of brachas and pleasures in life. And we definitely see with these little artisan children that they seek out pleasure and stimulation and adventure. They love
cherry lights. Oh my gosh, I could see that.
They love to enjoy life and have a good time. Like they're either looking for a party or they're the life of the party. Even like think of like Hatala members, action oriented, quick response time. They love their lights, their wheels, their sirens, and they work so well under pressure. So this combination of, like you see with you have the Chachma and the Chesed, this quick thinking, quick acting, big hearted, generous, notices and appreciates the finer pleasures of life. They like freedom and flow. They want to move freely, without restraints. And it's also like a kind of optimism and trust in the world when you operate from that place. But just like water can't be contained in vessels, like rain that floods. So it's a source of bracha, but it also floods. So artisan children could sometimes take up a lot of space with their need for action and stimulation and attention. And because they live in the right here, right now, and they're impulsive, they want things now. And they don't care for the boundaries of later or after supper. Like, they need their impatience to be satisfied right now. So we combine chachma and chesed, and we could also see how this child could lack the executive functioning skills of bina and lack the boundaries of gevurah. And we might wonder, like, do they have ADHD, right? And also, if you think about ADHD, it's not really a focusing problem. Rather, it's an intense focus that when the child is disturbed from that focus, they have a hard time getting back on track to maintain the focus. So, and that actually is also connected to chachma. It's an intense focus, like that intense focus actually comes from chachma as well, that need to be able to like focus on the concept without being disturbed so it doesn't like disappear as quickly as it came. This artisan child, they know how to get from point A to point Z, but it's not necessarily following the linear process that the Bina Gevurah child will follow, and we'll get into that soon. And because they're not detail-oriented, they might even have a hard time like expressing what the process is. They know how to get there because they know how to work things out in the moment. So they might not have the planning abilities and be able to communicate their ideas well, but they will get the job done without so much foresight, but in a very tactical way, kind of like figuring it out as it happens.
Last minute?
It could be last minute, but also very in the moment. And they'll do a good job at it. It's just for someone who's like super organized or super into their planning and knowing in advance, like they don't understand how that functions, but it works really well for this right side temperament.
It's interesting because, we're doing this podcast now. We also had the Embrace magazine where you shared some things. So it's fascinating how you're right. There's so much more to learn. Okay, let's keep going. So after that, there's chachma, there's chesed. Now keep going.
So now we move on to netzach. Again, part of the same personality, the same temperament profile. Netzach is victory, perseverance, endurance, the need to win, kind of boldness that comes in there. And in Basi Lagani, the Rebbe talks about a king that's willing to lose all of his storehouses of treasures that were collected for generations just to not lose to the other king. Like at some point, the fight is just about not losing. And we see this very much in this child where they have a need to win. And if they're challenged, especially in front of an audience, like in front of their siblings or in a classroom, the child's netzach is activated and their behavior will get worse very quickly. Like we could say that they're losing all privileges and take things away from them. It doesn't really matter. Once they're in a netzach state, their need to win is so strong that it doesn't really matter what they lose in the process. They will act as if they don't care and they will just keep going.
So if they're in a store, if they're in public, if
people are watching, they have a much harder time subduing that netzach that's so activated.
So if you recognize your child in this, should you then try to make sure that if there's something going on to move them to the side or not do this publicly?
If possible, absolutely, yes. In a way, we're going to get chutzpah, possibly, if it's done in front of other people. Sometimes things have to be said in front of people, but also if you say it confidently and you don't keep engaging and you walk away, there's more of a chance that the netzach will slowly come down. But I remember once a teacher telling me about an artisan child who reacted with chutzpah, and they were surprised. They commented like it was the first time that this child was being chutzpahdik to them. They'd never experienced that before. And then I thought to ask, wait, was this in front of other people? And yes, it happened in front of other people. And that kind of like just activates this netzach quality. And it could be very bold and in your face. And sometimes as adults, we kind of fall into that trap where it's like netzach against netzach, and now it's just a battle of wills. So this child, they need boundaries, but not power struggles, and they need very confident leadership. They do best with not too many rules, but whatever rules you do have, you need to stick to them 100%. And they have so much energy. We need to ensure that's channeled in the right way. Like give them opportunities to shine. Buy them a mic to sing songs for their elder buddies. Let them set the Shabbos table. Cut up salads from a young age. Let everyone know that they did it. But again, we have to like be able to not mind the imperfections and the mess. Let them create a carnival for the neighbors. Like they're so action oriented and have so much physical energy. It could really help them when we allow them a healthy outlet to express that. As I discussed in the article, it's really important with this child to use some humor and some silliness and playful response to diffuse power struggles. We can't always be in that space, but it's actually super helpful. Like for other types, it doesn't really work well to use humor in serious situations. And this particular type, you'll know it works when you try it and you see that it worked. But they actually respond really well to it. And because the netzach quality is so strong in them, sometimes it could lead to a lot of, arguments, and the less that we engage in that, the better. But also it's important to, at other times, have fun with this child to keep the relationship balanced with enjoyable interactions. And what we mentioned before about ADHD, if you're looking at it through the lens of temperament and Sefiros, it doesn't really have to be a disorder. It's a predisposition that makes sense. And this child needs freedom to explore and learn through action and building things and breaking things. And they do best in outdoor environments where where things aren't so precious and there aren't so many no's. No, don't do this. No, don't do that, and it's just like a way that they function, and it doesn't have to be viewed as a deficiency.
Is artisan like artist? Is it like an artistic thing?
Yes, actually it is. Interestingly enough, chachma is also the source of being graceful in action, which the artisan really prides themselves on, that like they're artists by nature and it can come out in all different ways. An artistry is something it's like a skill that's honed versus like a scientific way of approaching the same skill. So someone who's musical, like musically inclined, there's a natural talent that has to be developed, but a person who plays music from that place, the process is different than someone who comes to it from a very scientific way of learning music. So this gracefulness that the artisan has, that actually comes from chachma, because it's a result of smooth movements or smooth actions that are a well synthesized whole, versus someone who's more stiff. They move each individual part in separate moves, and that's more bina than chachma.
Right. So it's so interesting because if I could tell what you're saying, especially how you explained quote unquote ADHD through the lens of like just a predisposition and just a type. You're just a type where you're creative and you're artsy and you don't want rules and go play in the mess and have fun. But like in a certain way, all kids sound like that, right? Like which child doesn't just want what they want and want to push the limits and not have rules and just play? Like,
so you're right that all toddlers exhibit these kind of characteristics. And the difference is that most children will outgrow it after the toddler stage. And with the artisan, like that impulsivity kind of stays, that action oriented still stays, the pushing of the limits. Like all toddlers will push limits. They're learning, like, what does my mother allow? What does my father allow? Is it different? Is it the same? What does stop mean? But the artisans kind of don't seem to outgrow it. And it also, we can look at it a little bit through a different lens, that the younger a child is, the more chesed they are, kind of like the way Hashem first created the world with chesed, right? And then came the Gevurah, and then the Sefiros, etc. So it's like when we give birth to a baby, even the way that we're responding, we first respond like it's all chesed. There's no schedule, there's no routine, there's no structure. It doesn't matter how hard we try, it's a complete waste of time. That's not what's needed. So the baby is like their needs are all just not contained and all over, and we respond to that as well with full chesed. And then in time, there's maybe more Gevurah being introduced. We see maybe there's a little bit of routine or structure that could happen. And then we start to see this child, like even through the lens of Sefiros, like as their own individual, unique child. It's not just a baby anymore, And it's kind of the same thing with children themselves. So the child first is in like the stage of chesed, no understanding or grasp of boundaries. And then you see a lot of pushing of the boundaries. And then slowly, there's this understanding. Mommy, tati have expectations. And then you see it goes a little further with where things are more individualized. They start to notice like a sibling that needs a hug, or, someone, a friend who's crying and they give something to them. So actually, that's the reason why we start doing temperament assessments on children above the age of about 4.5, because before that age, like we said, a lot of what you're seeing that's normal toddler behavior and the child grows out of it. But in this case, we're talking about the artisan, the chachma chesed netzach personality, the right side. And that personality, because they have so much chesed, they don't look to conform and abide and stay within the limits. And that's something that stays with them. And it works. Like it's not a negative thing. Just like Avram, again, like Avram. A child like Avram, they're going to be pushing limits, but they're going to achieve greatness.
Amazing. Amazing.
It actually reminds me of a sikha where the Rebbe said, and some of this is a direct translation, and some of it I'll paraphrase. A child needs to grow and move. That we see it in the nature of a Jewish child. He's always moving. Even a baby is always moving their feet. But really, it's a sign of vitality and health in a child that he's so active.
I remember seeing that video. It's powerful. Like, kids are active.
Exactly. And it's hard for parents living in small apartments and families living like in Brooklyn without outdoor spaces and teachers with so many children in a classroom to hear this. But it's such an important truth to be reminded of, that if we have children like this, the child is not defective. It's just that the constraints of the environment and their life circumstances are not necessarily conducive to what this child needs to be their best self. And what the child actually needs, this movement and this action, it's a sign of health and vitality. That's huge.
Okay, so I think so to sum up, this little cutie, Chachma, Chesed, Netzach kid, he's active, he's artisan, he's no boundaries, he's Chesed, and he's healthy, and, we got to be able to channel him into, channel her into bringing out the best in them. So that is the first temperament / Sefiros. So what's the next one?
So now we'll go to the left side, and that is Bina, Gevurah, and Hod. And this is what we call the guardian temperament. So the left side, compared to the right side, is contained, restrained. It's inner focus versus expanding outward. And starting with Bina, Bina is the ability to think logically, to analyze information. It expands on Chachma with all the details needed to fully understand the concept. It takes the conceptual seed encoded within Chachma and it articulates it into details. It's a more mature understanding. So this guardian child is detail-oriented. They like planning. They like lists. They like charts. They want to know the details and what's happening in advance. Going on to Gevurah, which is in the left kav, right under
Bina.
Gevurah was introduced to contain Chesed, right? So Gevurah expresses itself with restraint, containment, boundaries, limits, structure, discipline, routine. Like if you think of going to the park with a bunch of children and you say to them, like, you sit down, you say, like, you see this bench? Like, I'm going to sit right here. And you see this area with the green grass or the fence. So I want you guys to stay in this area. This child, Bina, Gevurah, Hod child, is like so relieved to know exactly what the boundaries are, exactly where they should be, exactly where you're going to be, and exactly where they shouldn't be. It really brings a sense of like safety and security versus the child we talked about before. The artisan child is like, can I poke my finger out, like through the gate? Can I climb over it, crawl under it?
And if you see a kid needs that, part of understanding it, I'm imagining, is so giving it to them, reassuring them this safety, this security, right?
Yes, this child really needs that. It's how they're meant to operate at their best is when they have this security and when they know. Yes. And again, when you're working within the boundaries and the structure and routine, that's what we said about doing the right thing, right? We come to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak personified Gevurah, very different than Avraham. We see with Yitzchak that he followed in his father's footsteps. He reopened the wells originally dug by his father Avram. And when it came to the Akedah, Yitzchak was a willing participant. And while Avram traveled from his birthplace, Yitzchak never left the boundaries of his hometown. Avram personifies expansiveness, lack of boundaries, and Yitzchak, he's like following in his father's ways, keeping his father's traditions alive. And Gevurah is where Yira comes from, the fear of Hashem. So this is naturally a compliant, obedient child who likes to do the right thing.
They like to do the right thing. It's like inherent to them. It's almost like unfair when we I'm thinking for myself, like I'm getting upset at a kid who's not naturally compliant. Hashem didn't make them that way. Like it's understanding that some kids, their hardwire is they're going to be that goody-goody. That's not their choice even.
Yes, this child really wants to please his parents and teachers. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to cooperate. And yes, they weren't trained to be this way. It's their natural wiring, their natural hardwiring. And then we come to Hod. And Hod is acknowledgement, gratitude, a kind of acceptance. It's sincerity, humility, devotion, splendor, pride. There are a lot of different kinds of words that describe height. And the splendor of height actually comes from the orderly, beautiful functioning of the universe. Like it's an appreciation. Like when we look around and see such beauty in the world, it's because there's some order. And that's the splendor of height. So what this looks like in relationships is showing up with devotion, reliability, consistency, being of service. It's like the companion power of Netzach, but while Netzach is forcefully overcoming opposition, right? Again, because it's the right side of expansion and pushing boundaries. And Hide is coming from the left side, which is contraction. So Hide stays within the boundaries. It conforms to the structures that are in place. And the inner quality of Hide is tmimus, sincerity. So Hide really shows up in a sincere and steady way. So this child, this guardian, coming from a place of Bina, Gevurah, and Hide, they're detail-oriented. They're orderly. They're timely, dependable, reliable, helpful. They show up consistently. They're of service to others. They're devoted. And actually, like one of the challenges is, especially you see this with adults, that their devotion and consistency like could come to just be expected and taken for granted. Or you see this with children in the classroom also. Like sometimes it's the artisan children who the teachers will, make point systems for and charts and of course these guardian children might be like Talmud HaShavua more easily, but then there are still more of them that are sitting there and not being recognized for just like how good they are. And while you are saying that it comes naturally to them, they still deserve to be recognized for it because they really consistently show up in that way as adults as well. So they want to make sure everything is being done right. They also want to make sure that the rules are followed. Like if there's a point system and a prize system, it has to be fair, it has to be even. We have to follow the rules. Like the Gevurah child might be fine, like if everyone else gets ice cream, as long as they get the ice cream as well. Like everyone's happy, we're all good. This child is like going to defend the boundaries of din. Like whether to their advantage or disadvantage. Like the rule is the rule.
The Chesed one is going to be okay if everyone gets it.
Exactly. The Chesed one will be fine, if everyone.
Whereas no, you didn't deserve it.
Yes, this child, the left side, the Gevurah child is like, yes, like exactly. They're going to defend the boundaries. This is how the game works. These are the rules. Their need to know in advance, like what the expectations are, is very important. And in some ways, they could be very sentimental about the past and cautious about the future. Because when you're very reliant on clear boundaries and structures, anything new and unknown could just feel very stressful. Unlike the Chesed child who loves a new experience and you could just tell them on the fly, like somewhere new that they're going or something, like something different in their schedule, and they're totally cool with it. So again, we're looking at two really different ways of operating. The right side, the left side, they really function very differently. Neither one is better or worse. It's just a matter of like knowing like who these children are and how they're wired and what's important to them and what their needs are.
Right. But the question is like, what's the balance between catering to the child's needs versus like helping them like grow past their comfort zone a little? In other words, maybe we're enabling the kid to just be so dependent on schedules. Maybe they should learn to be a little bit more spontaneous or something.
Yes. So that's a great question. And it really requires a very nuanced, balanced approach. Like it's not a question that I can answer quickly because really each situation is different. But the overall idea here is that we want to meet a child's needs, but we also don't want to accommodate their rigidity because that will only lead to more rigidity, not less. So when we're talking about their needs, the goal here is that every child has inherent needs. And let's say, for example, it might need more structure than we're comfortable providing, right? When we do provide that, the child starts to function better. They're calmer. They're more content. They're more regulated. And if we do that consistently for a few months, at least, in time, we start to build trust in the child. And now this child knows that she can rely on us. And her defenses and her coping mechanisms are lowered. And then we can actually take the child by the arm and lead them out of their comfort zone, slowly but surely. So for this child, if she falls apart from not knowing in advance, we're not helping her by making her learn how to deal with it. Like these days, that just doesn't build resilience in children. If this child could learn to rely on us, to let her know in advance what's happening, she'll start to breathe easy again. And we'll see that, like in time, we'll have the ability to say, listen, this week, we're going to be going shoes shopping one day after school. I'm not sure yet what day it's going to be. It depends on my work schedule. That day, when you come home from school, I'll let you know. Now, I know you like to know in advance, and this time I won't be able to. But I know I could remind you to take a few deep breaths, or you could say, don't worry, Ma, I got this. Like we're kind of looking for ways that we could influence our children to change slowly by building up their tolerance levels, becoming more resilient and less dependent on everything being just right all the time. But we really can't force it. We can't just make it happen without first giving the child what the child needs. Kind of like the same with the artisan child, right? The right side of the Chachma, Chesed, and Netzach. If we come on with too many rules too early, too quickly, and just want to force them to comply, we're going to get so much pushback and dysregulation. It's not really going to work. But if we give them more space and more freedom and be really careful about the rules that we have and not say no all the time, and maybe ensure that there's outdoor space for someone who could take them to the park, that's a child who actually has more ability to build their tolerance for obeying and following a structure and a routine and rules when it's necessary.
Okay, so we spoke about the right side, which is like almost like one extreme, and the left side, which is the other extreme. Are we ready to talk about the middle?
Yes. So the outer two columns, the left and right, actually make up about 70 to 75% of the population. And they're definitely character traits that you'll recognize within yourself or members of your family, friends, etc. Onto the middle column, the kav of Das, Tiferes, and Yesod. So this is personified by Yaakov. Yaakov personifies Tiferes and represents the whole middle column. And this temperament is what we call the idealist. Let's start first with Das. Das is perception. The kind of knowledge that gets integrated within us with a felt sense. It's embodying ideas fully. It's not just in our mind, it actually affects our emotions as well. So Das unifies the mind and the heart. It's the intellectual capacity that's connected to the emotions. We see in Torah that Yaakov, like when it talks about Yaakov, he has this great love for Rachel. He worked so many years to marry her. He kisses Rachel. He cries. He falls on Yosef's neck crying. We see a lot of expression of emotion. This child is very emotional by nature and thinks a lot about emotions and relationships. And it says about Das that if we were to use Das to create a greater consciousness and purposefulness in our lives, it results in the different emotions working together. And essentially, this is what's called tikkun hamidais. And interestingly enough, if you know any idealists, they are always actively putting work and effort into their personal growth and into their relational growth. Like it's a very
More than the other types?
Yes. It's like from a young age, you'll see it and it lasts a lifetime. Like it's a constant journey for them. They're very, very committed to this. Again, it comes naturally. I think everyone at some point realizes that, wait, we have to perfect parts of ourselves and different relationships in our lives, especially our children. Like we're forced in the best of ways to really show up, go out of our comfort zone. But the idealist from a young age already is like just very interested and really interested in people and in bettering their relationships. So this child is very emotional by nature. And we go into Tiferes. Tiferes is the integration of the right and left side. It's Rachmanis, compassion. It's also balance and beauty. So we find with this temperament, this idealist child, they very much think about the other person and respond with compassion, again, from a very young age, and empathy. And this is a child who, when they're playing a game, just like any other child, they want to win, right? But if they win, that means someone else loses, and it actually makes them sad. So they really, they care about everyone and everything, including the animals and the little bugs on the floor and the plants and the trees. And
They feel so much.
they feel so much, and they show deeply feeling emotions towards themselves and others. Going down to Yesod. Yesod is foundation, communication. It's the connector of the Sefiros that precede it to Malchus. And this connector quality presents very strongly in relationships. Like the sphere of Yesod is also called tzaddik, interestingly, drawing compassion and goodness into the world. So you just see with this child, like connecting and relationships and harmony within all their relationships. Like they're interested in this, they crave it, they work towards it. Also in Kabbalah, Tiferes is the quality of MS, and the idealist really holds himself to a very high standard of personal integrity. So here's a child that naturally is emotional, spend time thinking about their relationships. They're very affected by relationships, meaning like of all the types, they're the most fragile in that if there are any relationships that are not harmonious, it's difficult. Actually, I'll give you a good example in the classroom. This child in a classroom, let's say there's a a substitute teacher or a teacher that doesn't have good control of the class and the kids are having fun. On the one hand, she wants to join because she wants to be part of things. She doesn't want to, exclude herself and stand apart. On the other hand, they're bothering the teacher and the teacher doesn't like it. And she's so conflicted. That's a complete lack of harmony. That's very stressful. The other children, like the Chesed child and the Gevurah child, they're on different sides of the page, but they both know who they are and they do their thing. This child is really conflicted in that way because it's a lack of harmony, and harmonious relationships are essential to their well-being. So they need very safe attachments, trusting relationships. They really need to be seen for who they are, like to have that personal connection, like a teacher who just says hello to all the Maidlach, without looking at this child personally saying her name. That's really important to this child. And they need to be able to express their emotions and feel fully so that they learn to trust their emotions and their intuition. Because by nature, they have very strong intuition and they could trust their intuition. So this could be a little difficult I think in this generation we're more open, but definitely in the last generation where if there are men that are of this temperament, like growing up as little boys who were quite emotional and very feeling, that might have been shut down. But this is a child that regardless of their gender, they're deeply sensitive and very feeling, and we need to give them that space for it. So we've talked about 3 temperaments. The right side, which is the Chachma, Chesed, Netzach personality that we call the artisan. The left side, which is Bina, Gevurah, and Haid, which we call the guardian. And the middle kav, which is Da'as, Sefiros, and Yesod. Now, in the diagram of the kavim, underneath all of that, in the same middle row, underneath Yesod, there's Malchus. And in this framework where Avram personifies Chesed, Yitzchak personifies Gevurah, and Yaakov personifies Sefiros, Yosef personifies the Malchus. Now, what's something similar about this middle kav, the idealist child, but also the Malchus temperament, which we call the rational, what they have in common all the way from the whole entire middle is that they are abstract thinkers. So what that means very briefly is the majority of people are concrete thinkers. They are stimulated by the world around them and what's going on around them. And that's about 70% of the population, 75%, the right side and the left side, the artisan and the guardian. The middle kav, the idealist and the rational, are both abstract thinkers, and they are more stimulated by their inner worlds. They have a very rich inner world, and they're abstract thinkers.
You know what's interesting? As you're talking to me and I'm hearing you say about abstract thinkers, in Embrace magazine, I would say 75% of people want stories. And then there's 25% of people who want articles that are concepts. Now I'm clicking. Those are my abstract readers. They want
very possibly, yes.
Informative. In other words, they don't want just stories. They're abstract. Okay. So
ideas and information.
Yeah. So the idealist is abstract and the rational is abstract. So tell us a little bit more about this rational.
Okay. So the rational actually, we're going to talk about Keser and Malchus. Malchus is the lowest sphere in each world, and it's interchangeable with the highest sphere of Keser in the next world. So the rational is both Keser and Malchus. I will start with Malchus. Malchus is regality, dignity, the energy of leadership, the humility to receive. So leadership is really the ability to be independent in the way that you think and go about things. And this child wants to be very independent, doesn't just conform blindly. And they're not necessarily the type that you think is a natural born leader, yet somehow, especially as adults, they just find themselves in leadership positions. Like the eagle of their Merkava, they see the whole picture and they hone in on the details. They're big picture thinkers, but they also see the trees in the forest. When we talk about Yosef, right? Yosef didn't just interpret dreams. He identified the problem. He came up with a strategic solution, which he then implemented. So that kind of leadership skill and that's the quality that this temperament has. Also, the full creative force of Yesod, which are the reproductive organs in the body, are implanted into Malchus. And Malchus takes from all the other spheres, and then it comes to conclusions after processing all of it. So you see that this type of child is very curious about everything, loves to learn new things, but asks a lot of questions, like in order to process all of it, and then comes back with more questions. And they can go off on a tangent because they made them think of something else, and they're making these great connections in their mind because they're very creative in the way that they think. So they're kind of like absorbing a lot around them and coming to their own conclusions and novel ideas about things. Chesed is the ability to hold paradox. It's thinking abstractly that comes from Chesed. It's not just what you see in front of you; it's also what's hidden. Like when we're talking about abstract is not just what you observe; it's also what's hidden beneath the surface, like what can't be seen, but yet what is possible. Like almost if you think of the discovery of electricity and the internet, like the people who thought of that must have been abstract thinkers, because how can you think about something that like you have no idea about? Like it's not there. You don't see it. So this child is busy thinking and imagining, analyzing. They're in their head a lot because they're abstract thinking, and they can be seen as daydreamers. They have a very rich inner world that parents who are not of the same temperament don't really understand or realize like is so strongly present for this child. And back to Yosef. Yosef had dreams. It was very abstract. His brothers didn't understand it. He was misunderstood by them. He also had that special connection with Yaakov, like being in this framework in the middle kav. Malchus being right under your side. And you see that like when his brothers came, he showed no emotion, even though he felt such deep emotion. This rational child is very logical and doesn't show a lot of emotion on their face, but they actually feel very deeply. So sometimes parents are like, why is this child like so serious? Or like in classrooms, I've had teachers say like, this child is just not happy. But if I observe the child, I'll see like a twinkle in their eye. They're just not going to like act out the Purim story in a silly way because they're like a little bit more serious than that.
How can we get to know their inner world? Would they share it?
Yes, if you're interested, they will absolutely share it. The question is just knowing that, oh, this is my child. They have a rich inner world, so let me ask them questions about it. Like and their rich inner world is it's a healthy, positive place. Like they enjoy thinking. For example, this kind of child, like at recess in school, might sit like like in the boys' classrooms. Sometimes they have like indoor recess and kids are playing just like board games. So this child might be perfectly content just sitting and like eating a snack and observing. And the teacher might be like, what's wrong? Like, why aren't they socializing? But this child just learned so much and they have to process all of it because they can't just swallow information whole and spit it back. Like it all gets chewed again and again. Like they're thinking.
And for the same reason, they might sit on a couch or they might sit in a bath for 2 hours. They're thinking.
Yeah. And they're content in that space.
So fascinating to me.
Are you thinking of a particular child?
I'm thinking of people.
Exactly. Yes. So they have a very rich inner world. They're not looking to fit in, but they're definitely not looking to stand out either. Sometimes they're not so aware of the many social norms and unspoken rules of conduct. Again, because they're abstract thinkers, so they're not sometimes like those. Like they're just not either so aware of it or like maybe don't understand the importance of it. Parents sometimes could have a hard time dealing with like that aspect that they're not so aware of social norms sometimes. They just have to be taught it. But also you
can make them aware of it.
Yeah. Just make them aware of it. They might not, once they're made aware of it, they might not really understand it. But if you have a good relationship with a child, you could help them understand why it's important. Like, I mean, like if you think about it, like there are so many unspoken rules of conduct that we follow. Are they really important? No, but within the social context and within our culture, it becomes important. So then it's important, right? Another thing that could be hard for parents of these children is dealing with their child's questions and the child's need to understand everything. Like they can ask why and you give them an answer and it's like, but why? And then another answer and but why again. And sometimes parents can even like admonish this child, like almost look at the why as chutzpahdik. Like if they told them to do something and the child says why. But this child is not really looking to push the boundaries or challenge you. Like they're not the artisan child. They're not the right kav child. They're merely seeking to understand because they have a very strong need for logical explanations. And actually going back to that sikha where the Rebbe was talking about 3 signs of vitality in a child. So we mentioned the first one, the very active child who the parents complain about, that the child doesn't relax. The next 2 things are actually very applicable to this rational child. So just to paraphrase the Rebbe's words, the second thing we see in the nature of a child, he asks questions. asking why. When he sees something, he asks questions. When he wants to understand something, he asks again and again until he gets the answer. The third quality of a child is that when a child asks, he keeps asking until he gets the full answer. He doesn't want to wait. He wants a full answer now, and parents have a hard time with it. Parents say, when you grow up, you'll understand. The parents don't always know how to answer. Like the parent might want to say no. And the Rebbe says to this, some parents don't appreciate or understand the beauty of it, and they perceive it as a nuisance. I don't remember if the Rebbe said that's particularly about being very active or about all three. But then about all three, the Rebbe says that they're all signs of health and vitality in a child. And actually, the more the child does these things, the more we could be reassured of the child's health and vitality. So it's really amazing to think of it in this way. Like, it's so incredibly reassuring.
So all kids in general, and specifically these rationals, they're going to ask you a million questions and what year and when was it invented and what, and like,
but why? And they're not challenging you. They really want to understand. And also this particular child, even just like when it comes to listening to parents, most things do have logical explanations. And this child does really well when we provide logical explanations. Of course, at some point after we've met that need, we could take them to that next level of like Nasa V'Nishma, like first do, and then I'll explain to you. But their need to understand actually helps them to be more obedient and compliant. Yeah.
So it's amazing, to see the different kids and what there is to leave room for and the health, et cetera. But you started mentioning before that every one of these, Sefiros, Kaiches, temperaments, there's a Mila and there's a Chesed. In other words, there's challenges. So I wonder, like, is it okay for kids to know their challenges? Like, you don't have to tell them you're an artisan, so therefore but like, is it okay for them to know that naturally they struggle with boundaries, or naturally, does it help them, or does it make it harder for them, or make them feel insecure? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It starts with us first changing our perception about challenges. Understanding the Sefiros that personify a child's temperament really holds the key to understanding and appreciating their strengths and their challenges. So it helps us know like what work they have cut out for them. And it allows us to speak the child's language and have a positive influence on them so that they can work on themselves. Again, like I mentioned a few times, going out of their comfort zone and showing up as the best version of themselves. I think that children, they know what's challenging for them. And I think they need to know that we see that in them. I mean, like as adults, right? Things that are hard for us, and someone could see us and see that that's hard for us, in a way already takes away half the problem.
Right. Like if it's hard for me to either come in time or keep things organized or keep things clean, like, cut me some slack, I'll try.
Exactly. But also, when we really could see the child's challenges and let the child know that we see it, I feel like it gives them strength to, at some point, be willing to learn, like how to get over that, how to move past it, how to work with it, etc. So,
right. And to recognize the strength in it. We're not knocking them. We're saying we know this personality gives you tremendous milas, and we want to support your growth in the challenge.
Exactly.
Or in the, yeah.
But also temperament is not an excuse to say like, sorry, this is the way I'm wired, right? Like I'm limited to X, Y, and Z. I can't do what you want me to, what you need and want of me. Sorry, it's not in my nature. It's really not meant to justify ourselves. The purpose is to provide an understanding of ourselves and of our children. Understanding children's temperament helps us take what we already know about our child and make sense of it so that we could help them. Like that's the goal. The goal is to help them. And on the contrary, temperament really allows us to understand what's hard for us, why it's hard for us. And that's really just the starting point, because like there's this balance of accepting ourselves with compassion, but also going past our limitations, going out of our comfort zone, showing up for others in ways that they need from us, even if it's hard for us, even if it's not our nature. And in that way, we become our best selves. So on the one hand, we're staying true to ourselves. These are our soul strengths. But also, we are working on ourselves to become the best version of ourselves. And the same is with our children. We want them to see themselves with their strengths and their talents. And also, by witnessing their challenges, we could help to validate their struggle. And then with that understanding comes trust and the ability for the child to hold our hand tightly and trust us to help him move through whatever challenges he has. and to come out better and stronger for it, and to sometimes even adopt a second nature. Things are not like of the spheres that are in that kav. And again, because we have all the spheres inside of us, because we have a part of Hashem inside of us, we are not limited to our particular temperament, and we have like unlimited potential to really show up and become our best selves. So to me, this is the essence of Chanech al pi darkai, educating each child according to his way. The Sikha from the Rebbe asks, how do we ensure that our children remain true to Torah as they grow older? And the answer is by teaching them in a way that is appropriate for them. Chanech al pi darkai. So what is the child's way? Like, how do we know? What is this child's way? And we see when we comes to parenting, we have different children born of the same two parents, and yet they're so different. You know, you have extrovert, introverting, daring, sensory seeking, like attention seeking, sensory avoidant, highly sensitive children, calm children, children who cry a lot, children who are naturally responsible, super inquisitive, super orderly, super messy. And sometimes we think that we could mold this child like soft clay and turn them into exactly who we want them to be. But the truth is Hashem gives them to us perfectly as He intended them to be, with their hard wiring already decided. And our job is to observe that child and learn from that child who he is. It's interesting because the signs of a child's like internal makeup could really be observed from a very early age, because children are their most authentic selves. They don't know yet to cover up. They don't know yet what society expects of them. Like, they really show up as who they are. The younger a child is, the more they show up as just who they are.
I guess from like 4 or 5, like you mentioned before.
Exactly. So if we are curious enough to observe our children, we start to see patterns of behavior. And if we don't jump to conclusions about them and we keep an open mind, we really will figure out the best way to help them. It's like accepting, on the one hand, that we don't get to mold them, but knowing that we do get to influence them. And the best way to influence a child is to first understand, who is this child at their core? How are they wired to think, to feel, to relate to others? What motivates them? What do they need for their sense of self-worth? When a child feels understood and the needs of his unique temperament are met, that gives the child the ability to go out of his comfort zone. First, so what we're essentially trying to do is, first we want to meet them where they are. And then we could lead them out of their comfort zone to be, I keep using the same words again, to be their best version of themselves, but I feel like that's really what it's at.
I feel like that means the mila of their personality with as little as possible of the chesaron of it, which means the balance of the other one.
Exactly. And again, we're not looking to knock something out of the child. If we knock the bossiness out of a child, we're knocking their leadership abilities.
Right.
If we're knocking
they could learn how to lead without hurting people. You know what I mean?
And that's exactly what we want to do. Allow them to become the best leader without maybe being bossy, or knowing how to delegate, or knowing how to talk politely at the same time. So if we look at it in that way, where the strengths and the challenges are so interconnected, any challenge really has a side to it that is something positive that the child has. And that's their soul strengths. And that's what we're looking to really help the child lean into and shine in that way.
It's amazing. So if you had to wrap everything up that we've been saying, this whole idea of the 4 temperaments and the Sefiros, and, how we want them to each, be accepted and go past their comfort zone, like, what would be your takeaway message for mothers? Like, what are if they had to walk away with one thing for today, what would you hope that would be?
On the one hand, seem very lofty and abstract and not so relevant or relatable. On the other hand, we know it's Sfiros, and every day we're supposed to be working on ourselves and perfecting ourselves according to the Sfiros. So when we individualize Chinuch according to the ways of the child, we start to see that things fall into place. Parenting is never easy and it's never simple, but when we have a framework and a deep understanding of children, and we can meet the child where they're at, and they feel that from us, it really creates strong bonds, deep relationships, and it makes all the difference in our parenting.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for us. Thank you, mothers, for listening, and hope you enjoy, and please share. Thanks for being here, Estee.